Yeah, 1 2 1 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh again, yeah.
Yeah. So what you can do is...
Should be on, right? Yeah.
That's it. Chain your 4. Test
1 2 3 4.
Test. Test 1 2.
Sure, you can give us the nod. All right. Is it live? Yeah. Okay. Well, folks, we're delighted to be here at Windmill Quarter with our game, brought to you by Sports Equipment Ireland. We're joined by Colm O'Rourke, who'll be up in a while, Tomas O Se and Michael Darragh Macauley, myself, Shane Stapleton, and Michael Verney are here to preview it. Tomas, we'll start off with yourself. What's the build-up been like in Kerry leading into this game? Are people buzzing for this one?
I'm not living down there, so I wouldn't. I'd say it's good. It's big. It's they are excited about it. I think last year was a relief. You know, you had 10 years of the lads doing so well. To get over the line for a lot of them, I'd say was huge. But they are excited. They are. They haven't travelled so far. Tickets are an absolute nightmare again. They come out of the woodwork for an All-Ireland final, and you're trying to tell them I'm long gone, and there's 22, 23 looking for tickets. So
Well, there's a heap of Dublin lads here in the first 2 rows, absolutely gunning for you at the half-time break, I can tell you that.
One hill. Jesus Christ. Well, back in the day, I'll tell you, I don't know what the story with the Dubs. We used to get when we were playing 35 tickets a man. So there was 3 of us in the house. There was 105 tickets coming into the house. And we'd be nagging the chairman of the county board, going up on the train for extra tickets. There was never enough. And then you had Paddy across the road who was stealing tickets off everybody, every county board, every fella he knew. So tickets are always a nightmare.
You were saying, Tomas, you're obviously not living in Kerry now. You left from Cork, or you were down the country anyway, but you met someone interesting on the road by all accounts.
I was telling the lads, I was coming up the road there, and I was driving up the motorway. It was quiet enough, and this car was going really slow, so I just pulled out and I passed it, but it was Roy Keane inside in this little Volkswagen Golf. It was like in an English reg, and he was going about 90 kilometres an hour. I was just about to fucking blow him out of it. But yeah, he never flies. He just goes car, boat, England, back over. He's over all the time, I think. A lot of the lads in Cork.
Would you have ever had big names like him? I know he's been in with Cork a few times. Would you have had big names in with Kerry before, giving you chats?
Geez, no. I can't remember anybody, really.
You wouldn't listen to anyone?
They'd be lucky enough to get us training. No, I never. I was thinking about it today, coming up. You know, I'm involved in a couple of teams, and I was just thinking, would it have an impact? Would it be something? I think young people today, it's very difficult. You can't approach them the same way that we were approached. You can't speak to them the same way. And I'm not sure would something like that be of benefit to them. Possibly, yeah. But he's done them all, I think. I think Munster, Cork hurlers, footballers, all that. But no, in all the years, we never had anybody in, actually, no. We used to go on training holidays and all that, but never had any big name in to talk to us, no.
Did you ever struggle with, it was blood and thunder back in the day, like in the dressing room. Now you're a manager now. Did you ever struggle with that, adaptation, maybe where you have to pull the horns in or pull the reins in a small bit? Maybe you can't say exactly what you want to say.
Yeah, again, there was certain managers. I never played under a manager that would redden you or embarrass you or just pin you down in front of anybody. Paddy had a reputation of being this mad lunatic. He wasn't. He was far from it. Jack was quieter. Jack was no roaring inside the dressing room. Fitzmaurice was no roaring inside the dressing room. We'd have fellas on the pitch who would roar at each other or whatever. But it isn't. You can't go at that. The odd time frustration breaks in. I've no tolerance. My tolerance levels will be very low, and I tried to work at it actually, and it was never right. Hence the few red cards here and there.
How's the tolerance going now?
Not great. Jesus Christ! If I had Roy Keane beside me, I would have hit him a dunt on the way up. Not good, but you have to. I work at it all the time actually. But it doesn't. I had a fierce, interesting chat with Paul Galvin one night. So I used to room with Galvin for a while, and he had desperate problems as well with his tolerance or his two of us anger issues. Yeah, but we were talking about once the snap goes, that's it. There's no pulling back. There's no explaining. It's terrible. Like so, it never bothered me in championship because you'd be focused in, but in league, it was terrible. Like.
Can you give me any particular example?
There was one day, I was living in Cork for the whole thing. So I remember, I don't know what year it was during the league, and I was after getting sent off twice, and I was back. This is a true story, and I was back, and Jack rang me the night before, and he says, "Are you all right?" I said, "I'm good. I'm all right. There's no problem." So we went out with a league game in Killarney against Laois, I think. And in fairness, your man never went down. Who was it? It was one of the midfielders. I was at home before the match was over again. I was gone after about 15 minutes. So I just left, and I was at home before the game was over. My wife was looking at me coming in the door. But yeah, but never in championship. The only time I got sent off in championship was against the boys down in Thurles, way back, long time ago.
Michael, Darragh, what was the week of an All-Ireland final like up here?
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Need to jump in on that one. I distinctly remember, I'm pretty sure it was his last ever game, and I was running down the Hogan stand as much as I can run, and this fella hit me the biggest uppercut I think I've ever got in my stomach, and I've never recovered from the winding I've got since. I think he did well the rest that day, to be fair. Sorry, what you were saying?
Just the week of an All-Ireland final. I think you've said it before about how kind of inconspicuous you can be up here, whereas the Kerry lads, they're meeting people on the street and everybody wants to talk about their game. Did you always kind of feel at times it was maybe a blessing to be in a big city and be maybe anonymous the week of a big game?
It's actually something you don't really appreciate. There's obviously pros and cons of it. And I spent a bit of time with Tommy Walsh yesterday, and he was saying the same. He just said it's madness down there, and I actually appreciate it. I was actually down for a wedding recently, and I got more photos and selfies in Kerry in a weekend than I would in a year in Dublin, and generally that's a fact. So I think he said you just have to kind of bury the head down there. He's it's all encompassing, I think. And down here, it depends where you are. If you want to find selfies and that sort of crack, you can find it. But I think it's probably a little easier. So it's less all encompassing, I suppose. Yeah.
Were there any particular lads that would like to find the selfies and would go to these places where they're going to be mobbed by people?
We all know there's a few lads loving a selfie, but we won't out them here. We'll be nice.
Different people have different All-Ireland final week preparation, shall we say. Was there ever a week where you felt like you maybe got things wrong, or you took your eye off the ball, or where you maybe had to learn from your mistakes another year, or anything like that?
Yeah, I suppose. I was lucky enough to be able to have a few of them over the years, and I remember had different routines. I think I remember my first ever All Ireland, and like if you remember 2011, the place was hopping, and I'd never played an All Ireland final before, and I didn't really know how to go about it. I remember I ended up watching that film Shutter Island. Remember Shutter Island? Same that film, and it confused the shite out of me. And I just went to bed, and I slept like a baby, going, "What the fuck just happened there?" Like. And I actually just I had the best sleep of my life, and I woke up and I was just still thinking about that film. I was like, what did he? And then I was like, oh shit, you have to have that match later. So that was great. I think I need to watch Shutter Island the whole time. And then I actually fell into a weird routine where I used to get some of these messers over here with the beers in their hand, no doubt. And we ended up they'd always come over to the house before the game, and we ended up playing this board game. Do you remember the name of it? Avalon. I just remember the name of it, Avalon. It's this weird board game that Paul Galvin, that'd be weird. Paul Mannion, I'm out in all the secrets here. Paul Mannion brought it to a training camp one day. It's this real nerd game, where you have these little gremlins and all that sort of stuff, and I just got really into it for a while. So that was that's what we used to do the night before games. So yeah, that was the crack. Yeah.
Tomas, you were a big Avalon fan, I'd say, the night before a big game, were you?
No, it was different. It was a big long day for us. I was living in Cork, and I was just thinking, the build-up in Kerry would be insane. I was never at home for any All Ireland.
You were always away, were you? And glad to be away, I'd say.
I was glad to be away. I was down in Cork, and I was always away, and it was all hurling in the city down in Cork, outside of a pocket of clubs. But I'd meet the train in Mallow, jump on, and there'd be great crack on the train. Very relaxed, and you'd go up back into the hotel, you'd go for a kick in the evening, dinner, everything was laid on, and by the time you hit the hay in the evening, you'd sleep fairly well. So it was completely different. I always used to wonder, I suppose there's comfort in sleeping at home, but I always enjoyed getting in with the lads and whatever, and being in that little bubble. But in terms of being at home, the lads would be telling me they'd be walking down the street. Some of them worked in banks, so you had every single customer asking them the same question: will you win at the weekend? And Jesus Christ, why is the gooch going so bad? And every single time, fellas pretending they're walking down the street, they'll hold their phone up to the head, pretending they're on the phone. The phone could go off while it's fucking up to their ear. But it's I enjoyed the build-up. I loved the build-up. Nerves were always there, but I enjoyed the day before especially, yeah.
Was there, again, same as I asked Michael Darragh, was there ever a time where you thought you got maybe things wrong, or maybe you were, were you too focused in that, if you get me? There's a kind of a balance between focusing a lot on the game, but also kind of trying to take your mind off and going doing something for a day, or going working or something or whatever.
Oh, you'd always be like that. If you play bad or whatever it is, even if you train badly, I kind of say, what am I after doing for the day there now? And it's just, some days it goes, some other days it doesn't. You prepare as best you can and see what happens. The night in the hotel, we'd have mess and scutting all night. You'd go up to the quay. I used to love annoying Donaghy, so it'd be foreigners working inside in the hotel. And you go up and I'd say, Kieran Donaghy, I'll ask my room number, and we'd make sure he was gone, and we'd upside down the room, everything. As long as you don't break anything or touch his gear bag, we wouldn't want him worrying about the gear bag. But we'd have beds in the showers and beds and a thing. Honestly, no. And if there was anything, we'd even bring it outside the door, and he'd come down for dinner, and you just try to keep the smirk off. He knew one of us were involved in it, but he could never pin it down. But and then of course you're bolting your door for the next day and a half. But no, we enjoyed it with a lot of childish stuff. But I think to get through all that, it's a way of dealing with the nerves. They'll I'd say the Dubs get together Sunday morning, but the Kerry lads will be together from 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So it's a long couple of days for them, but it's still very enjoyable.
Is that something you miss most, that kind of the messing of it all? That's one of the best parts about being part of a squad, isn't it? The messing and the crack around it. The match is hugely serious, don't get me wrong, but that part of being involved in a squad, hopping off lads in a dressing room, whatever is said here and there, is that one of the things you miss most from it all, not being involved anymore? Yeah,
I'd miss a lot. I'd like the modern game. Everybody be giving out about the modern game. I'd love to actually play in the modern game or prepare the way they're preparing now. I'd love that. But anytime I don't know about the lads are still going really, but our team we're very tight on the pitch and all that, but we're not tight off it. I wouldn't I wouldn't meet up with hardly any of them. I talk to the brothers nearly every day, that'd be it. I talk to Gavin, Fitzmaurice the odd time, but the rest of them I wouldn't. And anytime I do meet up with them, it's not talking about games, it's talking about crack we had here or there or whatever, you know. And we were lucky enough, geez, we had a great time out of it. Time, winning, losing, grand, but the crack we had outside of it was brilliant.
Michael, do you miss it at all?
Yeah, look, I think I was thinking about this, but like I think you'll always miss the sunny days in Croke Park and 80,000 people screaming and all that sort of stuff. Look, I presume you'll miss that till the day you die. But as a whole, like I'm actually like really at peace at the other side. Like I'm really in a nice place with it. So it's something that you probably aren't prepared for. Like a lot of people aren't. Like a lot of people struggle on the other side of it. It doesn't matter how busy you are. It doesn't matter how many kids you have. It's more so how you kind of maybe associate yourself like really with the game, because like I have seen people that have been really in a bad place with it, just being like because it's all encompassing, as people say, like your week is taken up with fucking how many times can you meet the lads? You're meeting the lads 5 times a week officially, and then you're meeting them outside another 5 times, and like you see those lads 2-3 times as much as your girlfriend and your family, like, and that's just the reality of it. So it can be, when I suppose the carpet gets pulled, like it is a whole different story. Like, so look, it's nice. I remember I was sitting beside Paul Flynn when Sean O'Shea was kicking that free last year, and the pair of us were lacing up our boots trying to run down the steps, trying to get down there. Like we were itching, like, and like. That's I hope I'll always have that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I hope that'll be the way. Like, yeah. Look, but it's nice. And even at the matches now, people are saying, like, even when I go into the games, they're like, "Oh, do you miss it?" I'm like, "I have a Guinness in my hand and I'm having the crack," and I'm like, "No, it's grand, it's grand."
Who were the characters in the Dublin dressing room the years you were there?
Who are the characters? Oh, it's plenty. Yeah. So look, I know it's probably a thing that some lads only give a certain side to the media or whatever, like, but like playing characters in their own way, like Stephen Cluxton, I think, is just like the most underrated character ever. Everyone thinks he's like, would you have played with him with the Aussie Rules stuff? No. He does. Well, he flew once to Australia, yeah. And but he's just a gas character. And all the opposition players will have a certain opinion of him, like, oh no, he's just a machine, and like he's the loudest person in the dressing room, and he's the loudest person in the nightclub, and that's just like Steve. He's an interesting character, but he's a machine, and he's like, no one prepares better than him, and he's a hard one to kind of comprehend. But he's done amazing things. Like I was really happy that he came back, and that wasn't a question now, but he was someone who it just felt like it just didn't finish how it should finish for him, and he really had so much more to give. So like I was really happy that he went back. I was as surprised as every single other person, but he was he's a great man. I could be here all day talking about characters. There's a lot of lunatics in there, but they're all the fun things. When you meet up with the lads, like you forget about, you actually absolutely, like, there's not one time that I bump into Paul Flynn or Bernard Brogue or any of these boys. There's no one talks about the attacking half-back line, or the time there was the time your man came off the bench. Like, it's just like, do you remember that time after that match or before that match, or like on the night away? That's all you talk about. Like, so it's like it is. That's kind of where it's at, yeah.
And there's surely some night away kind of sticks out to you that you can tell us about.
Some night away. No, like those training camps. No. Which can be told? I know, like I remember we were getting into like playing cards, and then like, do you ever play hit the posts? What's the name of that game? We hit the posts, so we have to like pull out a card. I don't know.
Between the sheets, yeah.
Yeah. I remember like. I remember like we were down playing Cork actually in like 2010, and Cork were like the team to beat at the time, and then like between lads basically like lost half their mortgage on a game between the sheets, and we're like, well, that's the last of that. So that was the end of between the sheets, yeah.
Just talk to me, Tomas, about I think everybody, most people, even outside Dublin-Kerry, and team was involved in the semi-final. That was the final that they wanted, Dublin and Kerry. What do you think of when you think of the rivalry down through the years? Even I presume you were brought up on it, with Paddy being involved back in the day. When I say Dublin and Kerry, what's your first kind of memory, maybe as a child, kind of growing up?
Yeah, we were brought up in it. There was no, like, we come from an area where football was, there was nothing else. There was no, like there is now, there's a soccer club back there, the rugby club, it's great to see. Everything, there's basketball, everything back there. But then it was there's no hurling there still. But it was just football. And then you had literally from here to the coffee shop there was Paddy's house. And then we would have seen, we were just coming, I was born in 78. So 85, I was 6 or 7. I still have an issue about a resentment towards my parents. I was never brought to Dublin for it. I was left at home, and the other two were brought up. So I was watching that match at home with a babysitter. But the cup used to be coming down, and it was Dublin. It was 85. That was actually the last time Kerry beat. 85 was the last time, and somebody told me during the week that Kerry beat Dublin in an All-Ireland final. So we would have been brought up on that, and that even though there wasn't the same coverage, that team from the 70s up to the late 80s were the team that we used to look at. And it sounds foolish now, but like we had one video recorder in the house, and it was inside my father's room and my mother and father's room, and Kerry's Golden Years was on loop, and I mean on loop. And we just, every one of them were the heroes to us. So Dublin down the years, and then hanging out. See, Paddy, he'd be very like a brother. He would have been inside in the house 6, 7, 8 times a day, because the last thing he'd do would be working. He'd just dodge work, he'd have somebody else working, and he'd come over and he'd sit down, he'd watch the games, and he'd love watching the old games, and he'd have stories and all that. But of all the teams they ever played, he just enjoyed the Dubs the most. And whether that was losing against them, winning against them, it was just the whole banter, the whole crack, the whole culty and towny kind of a thing, and it was always there from the get-go. And you know, you were talking about there Michael was talking about how insane it is. It is like it's religion and football, and if you go down after losing, it's to be the worst thing ever. But if he was, I was discussing it with Colm, if he was around this weekend, he'd probably be up now preparing for Sunday. Like, to fucking, like, I remember he was an awful man. Jeez, he was an awful man. He, myself and the Gooch were dropped for going for a few pints mid-season in 2009. And
how many is a few?
I wasn't even with him. I was with Darragh and Mark. And then it gets reported, like sitting in the same bar with Darragh and Mark, and I get reported for having a few pints. And the two, I'd say Jack was cute. Jack knew we could do it without one of them, but we can't do it without the fucking three of them. So it was grand to drop me. But I was dropped anyway, and Gooch was dropped. But the story went out that the two of us were together. We weren't. Gooch was over. Larry was actually delighted he was caught as well, because it didn't look so bad in myself. But coming up to the All-Ireland, so that was mid-season. Coming up to the All-Ireland party, was getting ready, and he'd go to all ends. He'd order these new suits, and he'd have everything ready. But unknown to myself, I found out that he'd be fierce into Irish music, traditional music, all that, poet. He'd actually be well into it. So he rang one of his buddies and he asked him to pen a song about myself and the Gooch drinking, and just to put the lyrics to a simple song that he could actually sing, right? So he sang it inside in the boar's head, like. He sang it inside, and it went freaking viral, and he was useless with a phone. He couldn't work a phone, like, he couldn't work a mobile phone. But I'll always remember the following year, he did the same the following year. So he sang the song, and for ages after, people were coming up, Jesus, Paddy, I saw you on WhatsApp. It was funny, and we keep coming up to the All-Ireland final. Paddy, you were on WhatsApp, are you going to do another one inside in the boards? So he went into the boards, he sang another song about Charlie Hoy or some fucking thing inside there, and he says, before he sang it the following year, he says, I'm going to sing a song now, and whoever has a WhatsApp, turn it off now. I thought a WhatsApp was an actual fucking device. So yeah, there was the Dublin-Kerry thing was always there, and it was always kind of, and I know, like, I wouldn't have any issue if Derry had made the final, or I'm sure the Dubs, if they were beaten fairly by Monaghan, nobody would have an issue. But I think the Dubs and the Kerry, there's always something about, you know, there's the Dubs are always coming down spending their money in Kerry, and we all get fleeced when we come up here. There's a good banter, there's a good rivalry. I enjoy it personally anyway.
Just, you mentioned about Paddy there and about music. Was there a time, was he in Dublin somewhere where he met the Edge or something in a bar? How does that one go?
There was freaking stories all the time. I was thinking, I was coming up, Johnny Kennedy's down there from New York. We used to love going to New York, and the big thing when you win an All-Ireland, you get a trip, or if you get to an All-Ireland final, you get a trip. So we saw the world. It was brilliant. We went to China, we went to Thailand, we went to Australia, we went everywhere. And in the end, every time they'd ask, where do you want to go? We'd say New York. So the last 4 years, I'd say, we went to New York, and you go for 6 days. Beyond 6 days, you'd be dead. But Paddy was one to be avoided on those trips. Absolutely full of 100% to be avoided. So I was rooming with Fitzmaurice, and Paddy, this was 10 o'clock in the morning, and we were down in the lobby or in the bar, and there was a door over, and everybody was avoiding Paddy for the last 2 days, saying, Jesus Christ, you could get badly caught with Paddy. If you got caught with him now, you'd be dead like after the day or whatever. So he walked past, and I said, Jesus, Paddy just walked out there, thanks be to God. And the next thing he poked his head around, come on, the two of you, come on. We're there, fuck, will we go, or what do we do? Do you know, so we went with him, right? In fairness to him, we went into about 8 bars. He knew the owner, he knew everything. Half the owners weren't there, they drove in from outside the city. We had a brilliant day with him. And he says, lads, I'll treat you to a steak now, and that'll be it. He says, it's one of the most famous steakhouses in New York. Mike Tyson used to have his launch of fights inside here, everything. The presidents, everybody eats inside in this place, and my picture is up on the wall. And we were there, like he loved himself, he had a desperate ego, he was, but in a funny way. So we walked in, and there was a Limerick fella on the door, and he knew the Limerick fella's name, and we walked in, and we had a drink by the bar. First, there was nobody in there. It was, I'd say, whatever, they were getting ready for the evening service or whatever. And after a while, the pictures were going from the top of the wall to the bottom, and after a while, he says to your man, we're after about 3 bottles of beer now. He says, go on, show the boys my picture there. So the 3 of us were walking around. Your man was in front, I was behind him, Fitzmaurice was behind him, Paddy was behind me, and we were walking around. He went from this wall to that wall to that wall. And in the end, Paddy says to me, you took it down, you fucker, didn't you? And we left. We didn't even have a steak. We went across to Rosie O'Grady's with a steak across the way. But it was, every time you were with him, it was a bit of crack. It was a bit of fun, you know. But then the other side of it is either that, but nobody took his football as serious as him. And again, the dub stuff, like he just loved. And some of his best buddies were the Dubs lads, do you know?
What was the one about the Edge?
Oh, the Edge, Jesus. Yeah. Oh yeah, fuck it, I think they were inside. What's the name of the hotel the U2 own up? The Clarence, is it? Clarence, yeah. So they were inside in the Clarence. And I think it was Darragh Macauley. There was a lot of different stories going around. Darragh Macauley was with him, and the two of them were drinking inside there. And but like Paddy wouldn't have a clue. He wouldn't have a clue about U2 or any of that. He didn't know traditional music. So Canada was there, and the Edge walked across the other side of the bar or something, walked across, and Canada says to Paddy, Jesus Christ, Paddy, that's the Edge gone over there. Who? And he explained to him the Edge, like he's in U2, like, and he called barman over. Could you tell the Wedge that I'd like to buy him a pint? The Wedge, so yeah, Jesus. If there was anybody who could land you in it, it was Paddy.
Well, Darragh, just back to earlier when we were asking about, you know, talking about Roy Keane going to Cork training and all that kind of stuff and big names in. Would you have had any big famous names in? Give me any chance.
I hate to direct this story, like, but it is more crack in New York, especially with Johnny in there as well. The stories, like, I think it became like a kind of special part of like of winning the Slam. Like New York was like always a tradition. And actually, when you talk about photos on the wall, I actually just got a flashback there as well. I remember the first year, 2011, we went in. We went into off Times Square. What's the name of it? The Mean Fiddler. Yeah, we went to the Mean Fiddler for a drink, and the place was wild and like wild town. Like puts coppers to shame. Like, and your man was in there, and they were just being very good to us with their alcohol. There wasn't a whole lot being charged for it, and like a night was had anyway. Long story short, and we had great crack, right? And then I remember 2 years later. I walked back in, and we were in there with the All-Star, with this fella actually. Someone was stupid enough to give both of us an All-Star, and we went back in and walked back in. Some girl behind the bar, and she just looked at me and was like, "Oh, how you could just get a pint?" And she's like, "Yo, Mick, what up?" And I was like, I gave her a high five. I was like, "Oh, how are you? Jesus, how's things there?" And she's like, it's been a while. And I was like, oh yeah, no, it's been a while, all right. Like, and she was like, yo, dude, check out the photo. And I was like, what? And she's like, check out the photo. And I was like, what is this one talking about? Like, so I walked down to the end of the room on the way out to the jacks on the right hand side, and they have this little wall of fame, and they have, who was in it? Mariah Carey, all these sort of heads. Your man Pitbull. Who was next to them on the right? Who was next to them on the right hand side with a sherry too many? Myself holding Sam McGuire and a bottle of vodka. And I was like, take that off your bleeding wall, like. And I was like, that was like New York in a nutshell. Like, I was like, it was a mad town over there. So it was, yeah, we had some great times. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question.
It wasn't a question. Yeah, like, would you have had any kind of guest speakers, like, for example, tip like Brezzy there a few years ago? I don't know if you had any.
Brezzy, you couldn't get bigger than Brezzy, could you? I know, Brezzy's a great fella. In fairness, we actually did have a few interesting characters over the years. In fairness, Chrissy Dignam was actually great to us, and Chrissy Dignam came down to loads of people, and he came down to us like numerous times, and he's so authentic, and he's just. That's Christy. The ghost of Christy there, yeah. I think this one's on mute. Yeah, that's interesting. Like he was an absolute legend. He was such a nice bloke and just an authentic human being. We had a good few over the years. I remember, and it was of the time. I think Conor McGregor was big noise. We kind of every time they kind of said, oh, there might be someone coming in now after dinner. We're like, that's Conor McGregor. Surely it's Conor McGregor. Conor's coming in now. Conor's be coming in now. It was never Conor. But I actually think one of the most interesting people that we ever had into us, and I'm pretty sure it's David, but it's Brophy anyway, his second name, the arty conductor of the orchestra. I'm pretty sure it's David Brophy. Maybe someone confirm that. He was a fascinating character, and of all that we've had all sorts of speeches from all sorts of people. And I remember I was worried from when he came in. I was like, oh Jesus, he's just real like, yeah, like he just doesn't look like a man who would be able to like handle a group of 40 idiots, big macho blokes who are just like all this sort of stuff. Like, but he absolutely had us in the palm of his hands. He came in and he just went out of nowhere. He just said. And then we just looked at him, and then he just went. We're like, what is this fella at the top of the room? And we just sat there, and everyone's like going to snigger into themselves, going, "Who is our man?" Like, and then eventually he went, and then we all started going, and then he was like, and then we were like, and then we had this big whole thing going back and forward for ages, and he was just like. He ended up telling us these like amazing stories about conducting an orchestra, like, and it was something that was so far over my head. And he was talking about these fights that he would have had with like a bassoonist, someone playing the bassoon and stuff. And he was conducting in front of thousands of people over in Belgium, and how he was having fights with this fella and on the drums, and like it was a fascinating character, and it was really the one that kind of stood out to me. We actually had a lot of the fellas into us over the years. And I think he was the best one we ever had, yeah.
Would Jim kind of think outside the box with those type of people that would come in? Didn't he go on a historical tour one time around Europe? Well, that was the story. That was the story anyway. But,
I'm going to guess Paddy Andrews talked about that, did he?
He may or may not have had. But you did some outside the box things, shall we say, down through the years.
A little bit, yeah. In fairness, Jim is a fan of history, and he's a fan of like having respect for what's gone before him. In fairness, and that's been remembering Dublin teams that have come and gone, and then it even came to Irish people who fought in World War II, and we were over there laying wreath upon wreath in several graveyards over in France. So yeah, it was that was definitely a little bit left field, but it was an interesting one. It was definitely something different, but I think we ended up having it was one of these kind of nights where we ended up having a few beers, and then at 9 o'clock in the morning after having a few beers in a graveyard is not where you want to be. Basically, is where I'm just all I'm going to say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we might actually bring up Colm O'Rourke now for the next part of the show. Colm is fresh from his Tailteann Cup success. I don't know whether he'll get a big Bula bus in Dublin, but meet legend Colm O'Rourke.
If we could all sing just "Come On You Boys in Blue" as he enters the stage, like.
Just a reminder, we're brought to you by sportsequipmentireland.ie, so keep an eye out for that. And we're live on ourgame.ie, so subscribe if you're not already doing so.
Colm, the first thing I'll ask is, how much thought did you put into the reference you made in your RTE interview after about your activities of what you were going to do over the next couple of days after your Tailteann Cup win?
What was it again? What was the term, the Latin term again?
Because everybody knows that, like, you know.
I don't think Damien Lawler knew it. I didn't know it at the time either, to be honest.
Nunc est bibendum. It came from, the historical thing was when Antony and Cleopatra attacked Rome with their ships, whatever, a couple of thousand years ago, and eventually the Romans beat them, and Cleopatra committed suicide, and Horace was the leading poet in Rome at the time, and he had a great opinion of himself, so he thought this was a cause of celebration. So one of his lines was, Nunc est bibendum. After the battle was over, he says, now it's time to drink. And so a lot of our lads took it literally now for about 4 days in a row. And you talk about the Boar's Head. I had a text from two of them on the Wednesday, standing outside the Boar's Head, wondering was I going to join them. And let's say it's not my scene.
You said everybody knows that reference. Just a show of hands, had anybody ever heard of that reference before? All blank stares coming back up at me.
They didn't get a classical education, you see. You see, that came from the classical school, because when you went to St. Pat's, you were expected, yes, Paddy Woods would know that, we originally did Latin and Greek. So this wasn't a bad education now to do some of those subjects.
You enjoyed your success anyway, it's fair to say.
We did, yeah. And I suppose the other side of the reference to that, or the interview, was I was determined not to say all the stupid things that managers say after matches, where we were expecting a hard game and we came up here and we knew it was going to be tough, but at the end of the day we thought we might get a win, and I was saying, well, fuck that. I heard I've had my dose of that for 40 years, so let's think about saying something different.
Michael, when I have you there, he's talking about managers throwing out cliches. Your former manager, Jim, was the best man in the world to throw out cliches. Presume he didn't speak like that behind closed doors at all, did he?
The media loves Jim, don't they? He was a machine for it, like, and you actually just couldn't get him off topic. Like, I remember talking to you lads and other boys, and like the pain that these had trying to interview Jim and just trying to get anything out of him. And you could have it doesn't matter. You could be waterboarding him, you could be doing anything. Like, and he will stick to that script no matter what happens. Like, he's a machine. He's a machine, and there's no getting away from it. I thought it was gas. They talk about all this media training and stuff. Like, it's like, you don't need this. Like, yeah, it's nonsense. Like, so like if it, but like Jim, I actually like. At the start, I was like, come on, Jim, give them something, give them an inch, will you? And then actually, by the end of it, I was like, it's gas, actually. Like, it was gas how much it just pissed off everyone else. Like,
there's the lads in the media genuinely think that he was trolling people the whole way through. Like, it was like a mission to basically pee off everybody in the media.
Oh, yeah, and he did a great job. Like, and even like anyone in the, like, I know when you talk to anyone in the media land, even like the PR people that we work with and stuff, like, they're just like, I know he's fully hate us, like, which is like it's fair, like, but it was, yeah, like Jim's a different animal. That's how Jim operates, and that is Jim.
I suppose, Colm, you were probably very relaxed about talking to the media, seeing as, like, going back to the 80s, you were even writing a column in the Sunday Tribune, or was it the Irish, a different paper at the time, anyway. But after all the decades of doing the Sunday game as well, the thought of being the other side of the microphone probably didn't even bother you.
Yeah, well, nobody passed any remarks on what I said anyway. So it just was a continuation of that. But Sean Boylan had always the motto, you say plenty, but you don't need to say anything. But you know, you can talk, and we had plenty of fellas like, you know, that we could wheel out, like David Beggy and fellas like that, and they give massive interviews. But like, you know, when you spoon through it, there was nothing in it. But like, it kept people in jobs. I often thought it strange at Jim Gavin for a fella who was interesting and who had a great sort of appreciation of the game and traditions of the game and the importance of the game, that while he wanted to promote the game and he was the best man to actually not give anything back. So there was that sort of, I suppose, divergence between his respect for the game, but like when it came to his own team, it was very much business.
What would you say to your players now, media-wise? Would you encourage them to do anything, or if people ask them to do stuff, would you let them off? Or
I just told them to do what they liked. I said, you're old enough, smart enough. If you do something stupid, well, that's your problem. But I said, if you want to do interviews with anybody, do them. I don't care. And I think that we really have to trust young people, that they are mature and that they are able to look after themselves. I don't agree with the idea that you sort of try and put players on mute before games, or that you try to I think it's good for people to be out front, to promote themselves, to show that they're intelligent, that they can answer questions. And the days of, I think teams, I don't know whether Michael and Tomas would agree, but the days when other teams would say, pin up something, this fella thinks we're this, that and the other, I think that's all gone anyway. That's all stupid stuff. That motivation doesn't come from those sort of things anymore, or maybe never did. So as far as I'm concerned, I trust the players, and if they want to do interviews or want to do things, now some of them did really stupid interviews, but anyway, they'll learn.
is now that you're
Radioactive, Tomas.
Christy Dignam has still been piped in there somewhere. What would you say to young fellas now, Tomas? Fair to say, Paddy got stung a couple of times with a couple of interviews he did back in the day. The effing animals one would definitely be one anyway. But I think there's a duty on players and managers to, number one, promote the games. And I just don't think players are visible enough now. What do you think yourself?
If you're looking at it, it depends what side of the fence you're on. If you're a supporter, you want to hear players. If you're in the media, you want to interview players. But if you're a manager, you want to win games, and it's not your concern what goes over the fence. So I totally understand the big teams that would shut down you at an All-Ireland final. And I suppose, you're talking about the promotion of the game, and I get that, but I do understand. Like, I personally, maybe it's not like that anymore. I'd personally, on the train up, we'd have all the papers there, you pick them up, you wouldn't touch anything belonging to Kerry, whatever it was. There'd be a couple of interviews, obviously, because the two or three would have to do it. But I'd pick up the paper and I'd look at the Dublin interviews, or I'd look at the Meath interviews, and I'd go through everything, and I'd find something that was disrespectful. And even if it wasn't, I'd find something. And I'd say it maybe in a team meeting or something, anything to get an edge. I do personally, from a footballing point of view and from a team point of view, see no benefit of putting a fella, because I've done interviews, and I've done interviews with, you go into an interview and you say, I'm not going to answer any of the hard stuff, and it's very hard. Some of the lads, like, you have certain journalists, and they're fucking good. They actually...
Not like these lads.
Waterboarding. Yeah, so I get it from both sides, but then I do enjoy, you see something with Kimmage and with one of the golfers, and you say, Christ, that's unreal. Or one of Roy Keane. I love that. But it's different, like, those lads are professional. They don't, like, those other lads are going into work on a Monday morning, and you might give an interview or whatever, and I think it's just a little bit different. I get both sides, but I fully understand why teams would hold fellas back. The hurlers, was there no hurler available before the All-Ireland?
There was nothing before the All-Ireland semi-finals. There were press nights before the two finals, in fairness now, yeah.
I think it has to, like, it is, like, I'm always, like, my whole work has been with youth and teaching and development of youth, and, like, you'd like to think if there's a young, like, my little 7-year-old is obsessed with Mbappe, and if he wants to find out anything about Mbappe, he can find out what he eats for breakfast, he can find out a million things about Mbappe. But if he wants to find out anything about Conor Callahan, like, good luck to you. Like, I wouldn't be able to find out. Like, so like that is a thing. Like, and it is important to encourage the next generation. And it is like I actually completely feel Tomas's thing on it, because I'm torn on it as well. I was all about a closed shop. Like Jim loved putting me out in front of the media, because the last thing I'm going to talk about is Gaelic football. Like, I was shouting on about Tupac and all sorts of nonsense. But like the last thing I was talking about was football. Like, so like that's why he didn't mind. But like and I get that, like, but I think it actually will get to a stage, like, 'cause it's going to go to a stage where and people might laugh at it now, but like in terms of like that kind of nearly Drive to Survive kind of the Formula One stuff, where you really get an insight into players, like, and look, it's not going to happen next season, but I think it will. I think money's going to talk eventually. And I think people are actually going to get a proper insight into these players, into these dressing rooms. Like you see it now, and I know we probably look at it from a Gaelic football point of view, but when a basketball manager goes in at half time, he's not allowed to go into his players. He has to go in and do an interview at half time, and in front of the audience, and it's coming in rugby as well. I think rugby are a step ahead of us and all that sort of stuff. So I think it will go there, and I think it really is important to give a lifeline to the next generation who want it. I was obsessed with Michael Jordan as a kid. That was all I cared about. That was on all my walls, and I could Google him. I couldn't Google him. I grew up in the Middle Ages, but I could find out so much about him. Like, and I think it is just a little harder for the kids to do that these days. So I think that's really important.
Colin, just where do you think football is at the moment? There'll be a lot of people saying, that games aren't entertaining anymore. You've obviously been involved in it for, decades now, but you were on the sideline this year. What's your feeling on where football is, the health of kind of inter-county football at the moment?
Well, I've been on the sideline for 40 years as well. Like, I think people give the impression that I suddenly dropped into team management, but I've been involved in team management every single year, I'd say, for 40 years. Paddy Woods down there was on a All-Ireland winning team with us in St. Pat's, a senior colleges team, and had plenty of success with Simonstown, winning championships too. But the answer to the question is that the development of the game is, I suppose, driven by smart coaches. And I always feel that every game has to respond to the way that the game is going by rule changes. And the shot clock in basketball being one example. Like in rugby, when I was young, I used to go to all the rugby matches, and you go to a game and the out half would get the ball and he'd just kick it into touch, and then it'd be a throw in. And when they changed it, that if you kicked into touch from outside the 25, or 20, whatever it is in meters now, it became a throw into the opposition, changed the whole dynamic of the game. And the same thing with soccer, when they introduced the pass back to the goalkeeper, that they just couldn't pick it up. That changed. I think the GA have been slow to respond, and the changes that have been made to the game have not encouraged the traditional skills, because I think everybody admires catching and kicking as the primary parts of Gaelic games, and they have been overtaken by a monopoly of hand passing, which now runs at 4 or 5 times the amount of hand passing to kicking. So it all depends. Do you admire coaches who bring the game to a certain level with mass defence and hand passing, or do you feel that it should be restored to a more traditional game? And I think we had plenty of critics in Meath early in the year about defending, and we didn't know how to defend and things like that, and I was a Stone Age man when it came to defence. But good defending is an art in itself too, and to be able to organise. And the biggest problem we had was we had so many new players, it took them a long time to settle into defending, and they got better and better, and their best defensive performance was in the Tailteann Cup final. So I admire good defending as much as I admire good long-range kicking and some of the other attributes of the game. But to make to make a point after a long talk, I'd say the games possibly are not as exciting. But in saying that, every Dublin-Kerry game I think that I have ever been at in big games in Croke Park, to me, have always had massive excitement. Like last year's semi-final was massively exciting. The 2019 drawn game and replay, they were brilliant matches. The semi-final, that Kevin McManaman got the goal. Like, what a game of football. So, like, it depends on the teams. And I think that people should copy Dublin and Kerry. I can't understand why teams have different styles than Dublin or Kerry, because for me, you just go out and copy what they are doing. And the main thing is, and I don't know whether there was a golden rule with your team or with your team, is when you get the ball in defence, try and move it quickly out rather than back or sideways. And I think Dublin kicking the ball forward has been the biggest part of their game for years. And Kerry, for the last couple of years, their kicking of the ball from defence to get into attacking positions has been very good. So, like, Dublin and Kerry, for me, have shown how the kicking game should be played and have made the games. I would go to the moon to watch Dublin and Kerry in a big game, because I find them such an enthralling contest and so enjoyable in every way.
And Colm, have you missed a Sunday game this year? Like, Tomas obviously was cute enough to go with the 20s, so he'd be able to come back in for the rest of the season. But have you missed a Sunday game?
He got it both ways, so. Well, I suppose I have missed it a bit, but if it was to be compared to managing Meath, I'd take managing Meath every day.
What was it like trying to manage Brolly when you didn't have to manage him? What was it like trying to tolerate him at times?
Yeah, well, the great thing about Pat and Joe is they had opinions of everything. They knew how to run the game, and never in a million years would anybody ever let them near a team. So they could, because they'd make a complete bollocks of it, let's be fair. But I was on even a podcast with them this morning for the first time in years, and they still have these great opinions about everything should be done. But, like, you know, they were great entertainment, but, like, yeah. But I enjoyed them no end, because I think at least they gave an opinion, and everybody looking at the television was saying, Jesus, that idiot, what is he saying now? Like, at least they created controversy, they created discussion. I think what you have now is a sort of anemic blandness. Apart from Tomas, he'll say something to insult people. Like, at least you could be guaranteed with Brolly. And of course, he'd say something this week, and he'd say the exact opposite next week. And he'd probably believe in it both times. So you need entertainment.
Someone only sent me that. Brolly just tweeted some photo of me being a dolphin jumping up out of the water. Does anyone see that? Just about an hour ago, like, someone just sent that to me. I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah.
Joe Brolly has an infatuation with you, Michael Darragh, because he penned a love letter to you there a couple of weeks ago about meeting you for coffee and saying that you reaffirmed his faith in football and in life and everything. Yeah. I don't know. Everything was apparently off the record, but, like, I've said this before. Like, nothing is off the record. One time he rang me and he was like, "Hell yeah," and I was like, "Sure, not a bother." And all I heard was tap 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 tap. And I was like, "You all right there, Joe?" Like, and he's like, "I can hear the keyboard moving in the background." I was like, I just hang up the phone. I was like, "See you later." And then the other time I met him, I was like, it was 9 o'clock on a Monday. Sorry, that's a lie. I was like, one of my bosses is there now. I wouldn't want to out myself. I was like, it was 8 o'clock. Actually, wait a minute. It was 6 o'clock. I was on 6 o'clock in the morning. I was on the way to work. I was going to get in and do 3 hours before it started. And but I just went for a coffee in my local coffee shop, like I always do. And I bumped into Joe, just like queuing for a coffee, just getting a takeaway coffee on the way, being 3 hours work for 3 hours early for work, as I always am. And I was like, geez, Joe, how's things? Shooting the breeze and blah, blah, blah. And just shot the breeze, like just queuing for a coffee and paid for a coffee. See you later, Joe, off the door. The next day, it was the front page of the Independent. Like, I was like, what just happened there? Like, I was like, look, that's how Joe operates. Like, he's just
Joe is a storyteller. That's how Joe operates. So yeah.
He had one time, and I always wanted to check if it was true, but I have a fair idea. I know whether it's true or not. But he said basically that you forgot your boots, I think, for the 2011 All-Ireland final, and that Pat Gilroy just happened to be wearing the same boots, and he gave you his boots. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yeah, I think Pat came on this podcast to clarify this. Unfortunately, without, I'd like to say it's nonsense, but unfortunately, there's a whole lot of truth behind it. But it wasn't for the game that he said it was for. I think it was for like the semi-final. I think it might have been Tyrone. Yeah.
You forgot your boots for All-Ireland semi-final?
I forgot my boots. If you want the real story, it actually happened more than once, and there was an emergency visit that had to be done over the toll bridge to try and get a boot down to me in the Hogan stand. I forgot one boot a second time, if we're going to be honest about it. But Pat Gilroy had a pair of awful Puma Kings that I had to wear for a match. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so that's unfortunately it's a true story. Yeah. So yeah, doesn't paint me in a particularly intelligent limelight. But there you go.
Tomas, I know you wanted to come in on the back of Brolly. You've had a few minor disagreements with him. He said the Gooch was an average footballer, I think, one Sunday night. What were your experiences like with him in studio?
I was just saying that the first time I was ever on RT, and it's nerve-wracking enough. I was on for a live match with Joe, and it was coming from Thurles because there was a hurling game on after, and there was an Ulster Championship game. I think it was Fermanagh and Cavan that were playing. And first time I'd ever met Joe, and I was fierce nervous about the TV thing, fierce nervous. So we're out on the terrace because the hurling was on after, the pitch was empty. So he was telling me, Jesus Christ, what's going to watch Gavin and Fermanagh? He said basically, he said the football would be turgid. He says Cavan, oh Jesus. So anybody from Cavan, I apologise, but he kept saying, I'm going to describe Cavan football as. I can't even say it now. There is a lady here. I can't. No, geez. Is this recorded?
Yes.
Yeah. So he something part of the body in you, and it wasn't nice in you. So I said, geez, Joe. I said I'm not a solicitor or anything, but I'm pretty sure you can't say that on television.
And he is a barrister, obviously.
Yeah. But he kept saying it, and we were inside. We moved from the terrace into the commentary box, and we were inside, and there was 3 or 4 working, and he said it inside there as well, that he was going to say it. And I said, Jesus Christ, we were 10-9, we were going on, and he was yapping into my fucking ear. I couldn't, I had a big list of stuff I was going to say. So he went on air anyway, and everybody'd forgotten about it. Next thing he started the sentence, he says, Cavan football. And he says, so I put up my hand up like this to my face, and he's as ugly as Marty Morrissey. And I says, not too bad. Compared to what he was going to say, not too bad. I never saw Michael Lester get angry. Jesus, he reddened him. When we went to break, don't you ever do that to me on live television. You will apologise. So then we were doing analysis at half-time, and there was a TV right there in front of us, and Brolly was on the phone. Somebody from RT had rang him to give him a bollocking as well. And he says, what are you saying? I didn't tell any lies. Oh, he took credit for making a sex symbol out of Marty, I think. Yeah.
But that was the toned down version of what he was going to say, by all accounts.
Oh, jeez, that was a good version. So,
yeah. Joe's well able, yeah.
Colm, do you have any good recollections of Joe?
Well, I used to turn down the volume of Joe. I didn't listen to him too much, because he was entertaining. He had Joe has a big ego, and at times you'd have to reel him in, because he could say and do outrageous things. But again, I go back to the thing. He was always controversial. And a lot of the time, I thought he made perfect sense about quite a lot of things in the GAA. He has a deep appreciation of the GAA's role in community, and that's one of the reasons why he has such a high opinion of Michael, is because of his role in the North Inner City and a lot of the work he does. He would very much appreciate that, and he's a most generous man as well. If you wanted help, whether financial or anything else, he would go to the ends of the earth for you. So I will always give him a free pass if he gets in trouble and anything, because of his basic humanity and his concern particularly for less well-off citizens, and the work he does and the places he goes. And Michael would know this, he would never take a penny for any of those things. And in fact, if he went to a GAA function and he was offered money, he'd be highly insulted, because he would see that he was giving something back to this great community of which we're all part of.
All Ireland Week for you, Colin, like, was it always something that you dealt with well, or did you ever get it wrong? We were asking the boys about that earlier.
Yeah, I'd say we were like Dublin, of course. We all stayed at home. We slept in our own beds, or the lads were supposed to do that anyway. So the build-up wasn't like Kerry. Like, we met up on the morning of the game. We came up to Dublin. We came to some hotel in Dublin. I think Sean Boylan was very good at having people right on the day, and pre-science. And he'd look at fellas and he'd say, you need rest, you need a bit more training. He could look in their eyes, and he did have that special quality about him. I'm glad to have him still with me, because he's still very good with the lads and they love him. And I'd say we got it wrong maybe on one of the All-Ireland finals that we lost, all right. But, you know, it's always easy to be wise after the event, and when you lose, you know, you think of these sort of things. Like, I'd say the lads are the same. Like, I can never remember too many games we won, but a few of the ones we lost are the ones that sting most with me. But like, ones we won, big days, they generally just get parked and say, let's move on. Were you the same with that? Did defeat sting for longer? Victory didn't mean that much. I must say I never got that much.
This man didn't have too many defeats, to
No,
be fair.
but I didn't get that much satisfaction out of winning.
Yeah,
You know, I didn't get a high
is-
ever from winning anything.
Yeah.
It was just a case, game over, move on.
Really? You didn't get that as much?
Not really. I remember distinctly after the first All-Ireland final that we were in, and we were invited to a function across the road at that time, and we were all sitting around the table, and somebody said, is this what it's all about? We were just sitting there having a quiet drink, and it was, to me, a major anticlimax, the whole lot of it.
What about that 5 minutes on the pitch afterwards where you're going around buzzing with all the other players? Like, was that not a big high?
Yeah, I'd say the hour after the game, and then after that, let's go home, please.
It's hard to keep this man happy, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'd be happy.
The
but
fans
like,
when you were winning All Ireland, the fans used to come straight out onto.
Yeah.
I got clobbered by a Tyrone man one day. Yeah.
He was probably right.
He deserved it.
Yeah, we lost, and there was the game was over, and Ricey McManaman was coming my way, and he popped it over my head. So I said I couldn't help myself. And then they'd won the All Ireland, and a fella made a beeline. I looked behind me. I says, hardly. Wasn't coming for me. He fucking was coming for me. Paul Galvin jumped in. We had a couple of fisticuffs, and then we just walked off. Yeah, but no, he was great. I think in 2000 they were building the Hogan, and they weren't allowing fans onto the pitch, and it was unreal. It was lovely to be able to go around, but all the other All Irelands that we won, fans were in on top of you, so you get into the dressing room, that was it. But after that, and inside the dressing room, we wouldn't even have beers or anything inside in it. Some of them, I'd always leave the dressing room very early, I'd be gone after 10 minutes, but I'd go down and enjoy it, yeah. But that, I'd have loved to have that. In 2000 we had it. It'd be lovely to have, that little bit of time with the group. But we never had that. It was not a bad thing. Like, it was just the way it was. Fans were allowed into the pitch, and it was different. Like.
Well, after the Tailteann Cup final, funny enough, I think I enjoyed Simonstown winning the championship the first year we won it as much as anything ever, because I got more satisfaction out of the lads, the players, winning than for myself. And in this particular game, the Tailteann Cup final, we went back to Trim and we were going down on the bus. And somebody, Barry Callan, think, rang ahead. Jack Quinn, who used to play full-back with me in the 60s, and Jack isn't that well at the moment. He's a pub down there. And he rang ahead and said, we're going to go in there. And we went in there and we spent about 2 hours there. And it was the best crack of all time. because nobody knew where we were at this stage. Now, after about an hour and a half, people started to come in, but for that hour, all the group together on their own, that was the high point of the day.
Just, Michael, Darragh, I kind of saw you reacting there when Tomas was saying, would you have liked one All-Ireland win to be swallowed up by a sea of sky blue? You never experienced that, did you?
Yeah, no, I actually never did. It was funny, like, that was just the thing. Like, I think as a spectator, when we used to see that, it kind of looked amazing, getting thrown on shoulders and stuff, like, or whatever, like, and all the crowds. But I suppose taken from a practical point of view, it's probably not great, especially when I'm sure there's probably a few Tyrone boys trying to murder me as well at some stage, but I managed to avoid them. So yeah, no, look, it was always really nice. Like, we kind of, look, it's blessed to be able to have traditions, but like these books used to be up in the same place in the Hill 16 every single time. So every single time we get the Sam Maguire and have a look up at the lads and that was the crack, like, so, and do a lap, yeah. So yeah, it's just different crack. But like, I think Colin touched on that as well. Like, it's chaotic, and you literally barely get to talk to the lads for days nearly after. Like you're all over the place, and you're in the children's hospital, and you're in the Moor's Head maybe at some stage, and here, there, and everywhere. Like, so it actually is really nice to just get a minute, just when you get the lads in the corner. Just what just happened there? Like, what happened there? Like 2 days ago, nearly, is when you see the lads. I remember, I like, in fairness, I kind of started that tradition, but I used to bring them up to Rathfarnham, up to Dublin Mountains, and we started going up to like the Mary Ploughboy in Dublin, and it was just great. It was just like out completely off the beaten track, up to Dublin Mountains. No one knew nothing about it, and it was just great with the whole team up there, and it was great crack. And then that became the tradition after year 1 and year 2, and then I remember I was like, "Oh, lads, come on, we're keeping the tradition alive." We went up on like after like 2019. I'm sure the world and his mother was up there. Like, I think the wedge was up there and all the whole lot. Like, everyone was fucking up there. Like, so we're like, geez, that was the whole thing about this place. Like, so yeah, that was the crack. Yeah.
Just, Colin, you mentioned about Sean Boylan there and about him being able to read people really well. Am I right in saying that in '91, before the 4 games, did you train like underwater? Am I right in saying you were a kind of an older team? You train using buoyancy aids, and you didn't run, like? Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, we didn't do much training on the field at all that year. We actually didn't do much training at all, but we did a lot of running in the swimming pool with buoyancy suits, which I think Sean got this from some Norwegian 5,000 metre runner, some lady who had an injury and used the pool for all her training and went on to win the Olympic gold medal, and didn't really set foot on the track at all nearly before the games. So he got us into that, and we were old, carrying a lot of injuries. So he was good at reading, sometimes he'd do all sorts of what would appear like crazy training, whereas most people now just go to the pitch and things like that. He could bring us anywhere, everywhere, and do all sorts of things, and fellas would say, "Oh, Jesus, he's lost it completely."
What type of things are we talking about?
Well, we do a lot of work, and we used to go to the beach in Bettystown and Gormastown, and he'd have us running for about 46 miles, and then he'd insist on everybody going into the sea for a half an hour, and this is in the winter, and it'd freeze the balls off you, literally. And it would be just like, but you'd really feel good after it then as well. And he had us rowing boats at one time and riding bikes and running on the gallops the Arabs had down in a big farm down there. And he kept everything fresh up on the hill of Tara. He did all sorts of unusual things, and I suppose it just kept everybody mentally fresh more than maybe doing anything, because I think a lot of the training, sure, it's repetitive, isn't it? And you get fed up maybe going to the same place over and over and over again, doing the same things over and over again. So sometimes, and of course, before the 4th game in '91, the week before it, you wouldn't get away with it. Now we went off to Scotland on a Friday night to train, and we drank the hotel literally dry on Friday night. Everyone got sick on Saturday, and the training session, we couldn't do the training because everybody was too sick. But we recovered in time for another good session on Saturday night. Again, training cancelled Sunday, and we came home and we played Dublin in the 4th game on the Saturday. Now imagine somebody doing that now and saying that's your preparation
You'd
for
want,
the biggest
you'd want
game of the year.
You'd want the WhatsApp turned off anyway,
Oh,
wouldn't you?
yeah, you wouldn't want to have... Well, that was the great thing. You didn't have people going around with cameras taking photographs of you and sending them back. But like, if people did that nowadays, you'd be just say, this man in charge of the team is a loony bin. He shouldn't be in charge of adults. But we had a great time over there. It was fantastic crack altogether, and didn't do us any harm.
Did you do anything completely different, Michael, with Dublin? Like, you would have had basketball coaches in at different stages, I presume. Would you have had anything else unusual?
Unusual things. The basketball was like a very, very minuscule part of one pre-season. Like, it was nothing really. Like, and I got so sick of the lads trying to play basketball. Like, they were just wrecking my head. Like, the lads just rugby tackling me and stuff. I was like, get away, I'm out of here. So that didn't come to much. What do we do? Look, I don't think there's anything too far off the beaten track. I think science came a long way. All the kind of boring stuff, like all the latest massages and yoga and all that sort of stuff came. The recovery element became along into it. The nutrition, we won't get into it, but like that did play a big part of it.
Hey, 1 second now, actually, it's only after coming to my head about alternative things that you did. This wasn't as a team, but it only came out in your Laker Gale after that you picked up an injury one time. Was it on a skateboard or what was it? You ended up. Did you miss a full season? Where I think you did your cruciate coming off a skateboard at a wedding or something, right?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of carry on going on here. Yeah, it's the short answer. There was two instances that happened. I was on a skateboard at a wedding, and it didn't go to plan. And I had an injury for a period of time, and then I actually managed to kind of come back from it, and then in the same year, and then we actually ended up kind of working back and ended up playing Kerry. I think it might have been a league final. What year was this? 2016, I'm gonna guess, or maybe 2015, maybe. And then I distinctly remember catching the ball, and David Moran, who's a tiny little fella, you barely notice him now, just a little tiny little, I don't know, 6 stone or something. He just jumped on me back, and I just remember my knee kind of popping forward, and that didn't help either. And long story short, I ended up trying to play a game the next week, and I came off with the game, and then long story short, they were just saying there's not a cruciate in sight for you, like, and we don't know which did it. Was the kind of the long and short of it. But yeah, don't recommend weddings and skateboards basically. That would be the gist of it. Yeah.
Did you give Jim the real reason why you were injured?
Oh God no, Jesus Christ no. No one found it out. I think till that Laker Gale. I was over in Sri Lanka by myself. And I remember my phone just started, I forgot I even did that. I forgot what it was. When they pin you down, and do you ever do one of those things that, anyway, but they pin you down in a room, and you're just like, it's waterboarding basically, like, so you're just like, and what do you do this? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what they got out of me, like, and it was like, it only came out like a year or so later, like, and I was over by myself, having a great little time, and my phone just starts hopping, and it was just like, Macauley falls off the skateboard at a wedding, and I was like, oh, balls. It's like, what did I tell them? That was part of the crack. So I remember going to bed that night, and I remember Googling like cruciate ligaments and just looking at it, and I was like, oh Jesus, this isn't looking great. But look at all's well that ends well, or something like that. Joe. No, I actually still have no cruciate. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's a strange one, and I actually get phone calls about it quite a bit because people do their ACL and then ring me, and then they were like, I hear you have no ACL, and yeah, it's not a big secret or anything, but I don't have any ACL, and I've been operating. I played a full basketball season this year. I'm going to have to chase that James McCarthy fella around the pitch now in a week or two. We have him first game in the Champo, so I'm still operating at a decent level. So yeah, that's just it's probably a little bit luck of the draw, but yeah.
So with no cruciate, yeah, it's not bad going now. Is it fair?
Well, in fairness, I don't know how much of a macho thing it is, and I remember I ended up getting him. I'm sure you're mates with him around Nogarra. Like I remember hearing, because there's kind of, it became like a mythology thing. I know this has been out there a few times about like people playing without cruciates and whether it can be done or not. Like, and it was very helter skelter whether it can actually be done or not. And I just heard about this fella that did it, and then I looked into it, and I was like, well, actually I can't. And I heard about all these fellas, and I rang every single one of them, but I ended up getting Ron O'Gara's number, and I was like, I don't know who he had no idea who I was. Like, but I was like, how are you running? How's things? I played that Gaelic football stuff, and I know he was an absolute gent. But I just asked him, I was like, I heard you played with no ACL. Is this a thing? I want to get through the season. I need to finish the season out. And he just said, look, he was like, I'm a different story. I only tore 90% of it. And I managed to rehab it for like, it was 6 or 7 weeks, and then I got back and I got a line sore out of it. So he's like, you're 100%, you're actually a different story here. And I was like, okay, that's not the answer I wanted. But I managed to just get through it. Yeah. So that was the crack, and I'm still here. Yeah.
You're still fighting a good fight.
Still fighting a good fight.
When we go on to previewing the final itself, we'll start off with you, Colin. What do you see as being the deciding factor heading into Dublin-Kerry?
Yeah, well, I can't see Dublin winning by more than 10 points. I can't. I think it could be a closer game than that. So, two areas: kickouts, turnovers. They decide all games. Everybody has their stats done now. Dublin will get 20-something kickouts. Kerry, depending, of course, on the score, will get roughly the same. And Cluxton will get away 80%. Can Shane Ryan get away 80%? Will Dublin push up on him? I was surprised with Kerry in the semi-final that it took until the last 5 minutes of the game that they really pushed up on Derry. Like, I can't understand teams. We tried as much as possible to push up and kick out, but if you give most teams the ball, you won't get it back for 2 minutes. And it normally, everybody has the stats done now on kickouts. If you retain possession, what the opposition on average get from retained kickouts, what the opposition get from turnover ball. Everybody has all these stats done. So, like, if you want to counteract the stats, disrupt the kick-out is the first one. It's very difficult with Cluxton to disrupt the kick-out unless really, really concentrated. It can be done, it should be done every time there's a score from a free, because everybody then has a chance to get really organised. And the fella kicking the free shouldn't kick the free until everybody is marking up. So that's one thing. And then the turnovers and the pace of getting the turnover up to the scoring zone, because that's when play gets disrupted and it's an opportunity, and most teams can capitalise on broken play. And Dublin are very good at putting a press on, and I think they have an advantage in that regard. Just
one of the players that everybody's going to talk about, Colin, is David Clifford. You've seen a fair few footballers down through the years. You know, his county career is only 6 seasons old. Where does he rank at this stage, and how much stopping is he going to take on Sunday? Or can he be stopped?
Well, when people talk about the greatest of all time, I don't think you can say that, because you never have seen. I've been at most All-Ireland since 1967. You weren't even born then. Tomas, were you born? No? No. Right. Well, I was at that All-Ireland. We beat Cork in the final, and I've been at most of them since. And I've never seen as good as David Clifford as a forward. I've just never seen anybody nearly as good as David Clifford. So I'd say Mick Fitzsimons is going to be given the job, is he? And he will battle hard to hold him, and he probably will do a reasonable job. Like, if he's able to hold him to 4 or 5 points.
Michael Darragh is not happy.
It should have been handed
to
him.
He had a runner, and now he's going to have to fall over. Might need a skateboard to get to
not doing your job. Anyway, I think Clifford is the best I've seen. And James McCarthy is the best I've seen as an all-round player, I think, as well. Like, consistently over 12 years. How many years is he playing? Many years James McCarthy playing?
He came in the year before me, 09.
So he's 14 years. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah, what a tremendous footballer. So, if two of them vying to lift the Sam Maguire on Sunday evening, two really special players. But yeah, Clifford, to me, the best forward I have ever seen, yeah.
Already, yeah. Tomas, he's going to have it's kind of standard, you nearly say, from a Dublin point of view, to keep him to maybe even 4 or 5 from play. They probably have a good chance of winning. But do you think there's a special performance brewing? Special players tend to deliver something special on the biggest day. He delivered a brilliant final performance last year. Are you expecting something similar again?
I don't know. I think from Kerry point of view, he's the one player. You look at the defeats they've had. Mayo this year, Tyrone a couple of years ago, Clifford was still performing. It wasn't Clifford's fault. I think that's the best strength of him. He wasn't. I think Fitzmaurice put it nicely. Some games that Kerry are kind of sauntering through, your man will be quite enough. It's as if when the need is greatest, he steps up. Now, I've no doubt the day will come, and it could come Sunday, that Dublin will do as good a job as anybody has done in keeping him quiet, which would be the worry that maybe 3 or 4 of the other forwards, particularly in the semi-final, didn't perform maybe to the levels that they need to perform. Paul Gainey will be under pressure to perform. Darragh Macauley will be under pressure. Adrian Spillane will be under pressure. They've no Tony Brosnan coming in. I've this friend. He's the most cynical man that I know, and he's a good Kerry man. And I was driving up in the car. I was sorry I actually rang him. He put me in bad form. But I was talking to him about the game, and he was saying, "I've been thinking about this game." He says, "We've lost Mourne. They didn't have Con last year. They have Con this year. Cluxton is back, Mannion is back, and McCaffrey is back." Now, you can argue that the 3 lads, Cluxton has obviously been consistent as ever, but the 2 other lads haven't had the impact, but it could be the game that they'll probably have the biggest impact of the year on. And still, in my own head, it's not cocky or anything, I still feel Kerry, because of the way they won last year, that they will raise the game for the final, even though they could easily have been beaten. Like Colm was going on about the kickouts, and with the RT stuff, you have to have all your analysis done before Sunday. So I have analysis done up on the kickout. And in the middle of the season, it's interesting enough, Kerry kind of changed up at the start of the year. They went full-on pressing. They got destroyed in Killarney by Mayo. I think they conceded 1-3 or 1-4. And since that game, they've completely changed. And they have this stats guy inside. I was listening to an old podcast coming up the road. They have a stats guy inside. And even though Colm says the stats guy will come in and he will say, "You're better off dropping off the kickouts. It's actually killing us. We're drop off for the amount of time." And then somebody comes in and says, "Hang on a second, they won the match by actually pressing up on the last." I think it's probably impossible to push up for the full game. But I do think, traditionally, the games against Kerry and Dublin, they have been going at each other from the very word go. I do think Kerry will have to come out. I'd always gauge it. I'd say in the semi-final, there's probably 7 players who were below par. And if you'd always get away with 3 or 4 being below par, you need over 10 players playing well. And that's what Kerry will need to do on Sunday. The Dubs are timing it very well as well. You know, the big Fenton is coming strong. You know, will Jack Barry go on him again? I don't know. Michael probably have a good insight on what Kerry used to do there with him. But it's very hard to call. It's very, very hard to call. But Clifford will have every single person I've asked, if Clifford doesn't perform, will Kerry win? No. But he always performs to some level. Like, I'd be good friends with Tony Buckley, and I've heard back from the Mayo lads when they came to Clark and Kerry were in a different place at the time. Stop Tom Sullivan, stop Gavin White. You'll bait him midfield, pinch on Shea down, and Clifford is going to score. Except that Clifford will cause a bit of pain. It's how much he causes. Have the Dubs, the players to go after that? Yeah. Have the forwards to win it? Yeah. But Kerry, if they can get that forward line, if they can get 2 or 3 fellas hitting a higher standard, I think they have the winning of the game, yeah.
Has there ever been a player before where, like, you nearly accept beforehand that they might get 5 points and your man's done all right? Like, Chrissy McCaig was following him left, right when he was jinking and everything, and like, you're not going to swap him off him because you're like, I'm not sure anyone else would do any better. Whereas traditionally, if two scores are got off a lad, you're nearly looking to whip him.
Look, I'd say like Clifford is. It is different. Like I played with the Gooch, and the Gooch was. Michael played with an unbelievable set of forwards in front of him. Canavan is another unbelievable player, but I do think that your man is different in some form. Like I was watching, I don't know what game it was it the Tyrone game? It was the Tyrone game, and we were blowing the canal end, and I never seen it happen. I never seen it in a game before. He was full, Hampsey was up his ass, he was right, and he made a burst from the full forward line. This was in the first half, from the canal end. Made a burst out to the 45 underneath the Hogan, and full sprint he was, ball was in mid-air after being kicked from the middle of the park, and in full stride with Hampsey up his backside, knowing that he glanced inside, he looked back to see what was happening inside him, and turned around, won the ball. There was nothing happening inside, there was a sweeper inside, so he didn't put it in. But he's like a good chess player or a good snooker player. He's 3 or 4 moves ahead. Now, but again, there will be the day where he doesn't have that game, you know. It hasn't happened that often, but they'll have to be ready for it. You know, there's 3 or 4, as I said, forward, like David Moran is a huge loss. You know, midfield can be an issue, even though I'd argue Diarmuid O'Connor has had a great season. I do think the Dubs perform better when they have that sweeper at the back, and Kerry perform. I think they'll give each other the sweeper, to be quite honest with you. Marley will sit, I don't know, will it be Murchin that will sit in front of, but they will have to have a plan for him, like. They might bomb up the field, make fits, I don't know, but I think he will probably, every game this year has hinged on him. Only for him in the semi-final, Kerry were gone. You know, it's as simple as that. They wouldn't be there without him, you know.
Michael, Darragh, Colin mentioned James McCarthy there. There's obviously 3 lads on Sunday going to try to do something fairly special. I think there's a cohort of 5 in Kerry to have 8 already, but Cluxton, Fitzsimons and McCarthy going for 9 All-Ireland medals. You know, you don't talk about it really, like you said, you didn't really talk about the 5 in a row and that, but surely it's a fair motivation to be out on their own as, you know, the most successful footballers of all time, should they do it?
Yeah. Look, and now 3 better book lead to wear that badge if they happen to get there. Like, in fairness, the 3 lads have been some servants to Dublin football, and they all bleed blue. So I'd love to see them knock me off some sort of mantelpiece that I may or may not be on. But yeah, like, but it's like, and as much as people care or don't care, like it's like it's not a thing in the team talks, or it's not a thing that's been said in dressing rooms, and lads are just going to go about their business and try and murder the bloke they're marking. That's what they're going to try and do.
You said there it's not something to talk about, but the Kerry thing probably is something. Do you think, like, a lot of those? Do you think Cluxton is back to dethrone Kerry? Do you think Martin and McCaffrey are back because they saw Kerry winning last year and saw what they were missing out on? Do you think, like, it's the perfect game? Kerry go for back-to-back, and they could really probably put a nail in Dublin's coffin, and particularly some of those elder players' coffins as well. There seems to be so much at stake Sunday.
They're not none of these lads came back for gunning for Kerry or gunning for Meath or gunning for anyone. Like they're gunning to bring Dublin forward. Like these lads have like just an ambition and a gra for Dublin like not a lot of others. So I think that's why they're back. Like, and I know Jack and all the lads are there because they want to see Dublin in a better place, leave the jersey in a better place, all that sort of good stuff. But they're exceptional athletes, and I think like Tomas said it there exactly. Like, it's what we think is in our favour is the fact that these boys weren't involved last year, and they bring a huge amount to it. Whatever on the pitch that these lads do, like, I know for a fact that these are all like good presences in the dressing room, and it's a thing that like people who haven't played high performance sport wouldn't appreciate. Like, there's players in the dressing room that they might bring X on a pitch, and they might bring that to the game, but they might bring 10X in the dressing room in terms of keeping lads in good form and keeping lads up for the match and in a positive mind frame, and someone you can bounce them off. So
who's a really good example of that? Someone who's invaluable in a dressing room.
Well, like I think, well, say just from the new lads that came back, I think Paul and Jack are huge, and look, Stephen's his own animal, and he brings a huge amount of wealth and experience and discipline to a dressing room. But I think Jack is like such like good energy, and I think like people know that anyone who talks to Jack know that he brings a positive edge to anything he does. And Paul's an amazing character. Like, he's just one of these blokes that you kind of want to be around. And it's whatever. Like, he's a ridiculously good footballer as well. But I think it's just one of these things that's probably undervalued from a kind of spectator's point of view about what they're bringing to a dressing room and the energy into a dressing room. Yeah.
Or brought something to the squad that nobody else did.
I always thought, wait to take Tomas's question there, but I remember like when I came onto the team, like Eamon Fennell was like such a big presence. Like, he was just this like all singing, all dancing, like caricature of himself, like, and he was just great back, like, he was just like, and I remember, like, I was like, I could never, like the whole team is based around this fella nearly, and then, like, I was like, I couldn't imagine the team without him, and then it didn't happen for him and Jim, and I was like, like life actually moves on, and unfortunately, like, but like, it is funny, like, how much, like, in my head, I was like, geez, he's going to be the best of the centre of the team for it as long as it goes on, but yeah, it's funny, yeah, like, I suppose, in fairness, the team always moves on, and it is always about the football at the end of the day, yeah. I gave a shite answer anyway, like, to be fair. Like.
I was trying to think. I don't. Jesus,
Who was your man that when they were trying out lads in training? There was a defender, I think, that used to. It was basically if you could pass the test with this fella, you were fit for championship football. It was a defender, was it? No. We were reading in one of your books.
Guiney.
Could have been, yeah. Could have been in Jack's book actually. This was his man that if you pass the test and you're able to beat this lad in training, he's basically probably mauling you and doing whatever. But there was no particular character that stood out in that kind of respect.
Like we used to go down to say, you see, it's a different time. You know, the condensed season, and I know there's a lot of people giving out about it.
Fucking useless the lads are. Jesus Christ.
The condensed season, a lot of people be giving out
Fair play,
about
dude.
it. But we used to have a month from the semi-final to the final. So you'd have a full month. The hurling would be smack bang in the middle. You get everything out of the way at the start, but you'd have maybe 2 full weeks of hard training where you could flake the living daylight. And we used to go off somewhere. We'd go to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and we'd have a night over and we would have a match. There was a couple of Jack would go up into the stand. He'd get one of the boys to ref it. I remember one time there was like we always knew the games would always go over the edge. Guiney and Galvin were fighting on one side of it. Darragh got involved in it, and I always remember Darragh won a free, and he won the free, and some fella came in late and top of him, so he swung back the elbow. So your man says, now this fella hadn't played, I think he played club football, but he was reffing. He was unfortunate to be reffing the game at the time. And he said to Darragh, that's hot ball now, Darragh, you had your free one, that's hot ball. I'm going to hop on, you won't get away with that in Croke Park. And Darragh says, lad, you fucking know about it. He says, hop the ball, please. But there was, look, all the characters, Seamus Moynihan was a strong character. Everybody was a strong character in their own right, and everybody knew, I think, the timing of when to speak, when not to speak. I think Michael made a very important one, like, there was a lot of quiet lads and new fellas coming in and making them feel welcome. I remember as a minor, years and years ago, 1995, went in 2 weeks before they played championship. I'll always remember him for it. Fitzmaurice was a minor for 2 years. He was there. He had a bit of, I didn't know anybody. It's crazy. I didn't know anybody inside the dressing room. Fitzmaurice came over, sat down and chatted to me. I'll always remember him for it, like small little things like that. I played the game a week later and I didn't know fellas I was playing with. But there was that kind of bond there. There was a tight group. Like a fella used to always say to me, as long as you're tight on the pitch, it doesn't really matter. After the game, fellas would go their own different ways. Kerry's a big county. Fellas go south, north, West Kerry. And once you hit the train in Killarney, everybody gone their own separate ways, you know. So different characters, yeah, but there was nobody really hijacked this. Everybody knew their place inside the dressing rooms, you know.
Yeah. Colm, Shane kind of asked you there where you see the winning and losing of this game. The players that Tomas has mentioned there that were missing, like, do you see like Con having a massive impact? Do you see Cluxton, Mannion, McCaffrey? Do you see that being enough to turn the tide potentially and for Dublin to get back, having not won All Ireland since 20?
Yeah, well, if you look at last year's semi-final, you'd have to think if Conor Callaghan was playing, Dublin would probably have won because he's the focal point. Even though I don't think he's had a great year now. He hasn't, maybe we're expecting massive standards for him, but again, he's a bit like Clifford. He tends to produce the goods on the big day. I just think Dublin have still 5 or 6 of the best players that I have ever seen. And I would include James McCarthy, Brian Fenton. I don't know whether you two would agree, but I think he's the best midfielder I have seen in my time watching football. I think Jack O'Shea probably comes into that, Brian Mullins, those type of people, but I think Fenton maybe could do even more than those. I think Kilkenny, Con, Brian Howard are exceptional players. I don't think Kerry, the first 6 or 7 players on the Kerry team are as good as those players.
The Dubs have to start Kilkenny, I'd imagine.
Well, I wouldn't think that. I would say that what a lot of teams are doing now, and I wasn't trying to be clever, but I was trying to do it myself, is pick the team that you want in the last 15 minutes of the game. Are these the lads? Who do you trust most to win the game? Because all big games nearly go down to the last 10 minutes, and every big Dublin game goes down to the last 10 minutes. I'd say Dublin will be saying, you know, we could get by with a few fellas maybe while the game is very tight, but if we have McCaffrey to come on and Kilkenny to come on, I think it could prove the difference.
I think if Kilkenny is able to do 70 minutes, fuck it, start him, because he's a fella that definitely would rattle Kerry minds. They'd have to put somebody after him. They'd have to put somebody after him if he starts. I think he'll have to start.
Jack O'Connor's not going to want to see him
That was another
start,
one.
is he?
Brolly reckons that he's not starting because he's not being direct enough, and he's not being forward enough, and he's too lateral.
If Brolly says it, then it's definitely not true. But I think it would be true, Michael, that Pat Gilroy has promoted a more direct game. Dublin got stuck in a bit of a rut there for a few years with a very slow-moving type of game. And it does appear this year as if they have gone back to their more successful years when you were playing, where they played a lot more direct football.
Really put it to me there. I don't know. I think there's always going to be that kind of structure thing to it. But I think it's hard to know. I'd be very close with Pat, and he's a great fella, and it's hard to know what his influence is there. I think anyone who knows Pat realizes that he's always the boss. He's always the number one in business and in the football relationship. So it's hard to know. I genuinely don't know what.
Were you surprised to see him come in that role?
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, it was. And I only had a coffee with him about 2 days before he announced that. He never told me a budge. So he it'd be interesting to see him being like a number 2 or maybe 3 or 4, whatever.
Not even listed as part of the management.
Is
team
it?
at
No.
all,
So I genuinely don't know what sort of role, and you kind of get.
He's a water boy, isn't he?
He's a water boy. Everyone saw him like it was the quickest I've seen him move now in a couple of years. But he's so it's interesting, and I'm sure it's kind of background. I'm sure it's kind of just having a few quiet words with lads, because he's one of those lads that when he talks, you listen. In fairness to him, so he's and I'm sure he has his own way of doing things. So, but I'm sure it's an interesting role for Pat to take on. So. Yeah. Look, I think whatever about the structure is and all that crack, you need some bit of madness to kind of tear up the script. I remember I was watching like Jack McCaffrey's first game back. I'd obviously have a strong bias towards Jack, but he I remember watching it, and I was nearly ingrained as a Dublin player. I was like, oh, you go down here now, and you bring it back, and you throw it over the other side of the pitch now, and you go through you just turn into robot mode. I remember seeing Jack getting the ball, and I was like, all right, Jack, now you're going to go there, and then you're going to come backwards, and you're going to pass the ball. And what did Jack do? Jack just went at your man, and I was like, well, that's not what you're supposed to do. And he just went straight past your man, blew by your man, and then blew by the next fella, and I was like, well, that's not what you're supposed to do at all. And then I was like, and then he ended up like just going through and ended up scoring a point out of it. And I was like, I remember like if they looked at that opportunity on the like as a play beforehand, you'd be like, well, that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not what you're supposed to do. But like Jack was like, that is what I do. That is what I'm good at. Taking on the man, and it's gonna take a few moments of magic to do that. And I think that's what we all want to see. We want to see Clifford going at Fitzy, going at Davy Byrne. We want to see like the lads are up for it. Like let's see if he's up for taking them on, and the other way around as well. So I think that's the exciting bit that we need to get back to. Yeah.
And Mickey, are you like a nerd about the sport as well? Would you be thinking about the matchups? You know, Tomas talked about analysing for the Sunday game this weekend. Are you like that?
I don't think anyone's going to call me a nerd about the game. To be fair, no, I'm not. I've turned into like a full fanboy again, and it's been real nice. Like I went back to the Hill 16 for a while. I was a decade out of there, so like I had some of the best days of my life in there as a teenager. So it was great to get back. I went back for the Mayo game, and it was back. It was great crack. So I didn't want to go back for like a half full game. I wanted to go back when it was full socks on. So it was great. I think the Hill needs to up its singing game. Like if you had a chance of like on, I didn't hear Ring a Ring Rosie at all. There was no like there was like I think we need to get like your man Brophy, the conductor there from RT. We need to get him back here there to kind of to bring us some voice again. That was the only thing I felt that it was lacking in 10 years. But no. So look, I just enjoyed being on the other side of it. I never like the whole. It's a huge part of the game. It's why you will never ever see the word Spanish door on the back of my top, because I've no interest in spending the amount of time that has. Sorry, Siri. But I've no interest in it, to be honest with you. I love like getting the best out of people, and who knows, I might get involved with a team someday. I don't know, but I think like the level that goes into the analysis these days is mental. And it just got more and more every single year since I was playing. So it's gone to a crazy extent now, and it's not something where I really get my kind of gra out of, like, so. Yeah.
And Brian Fenton, you were obviously duking it out with him for a midfield spot. How difficult is that? You've obviously seen him at closer quarters than anybody here. Like, how good is he?
Yeah, he's not a great man to duke it out with. He's pretty good at the old game of Gaelic football. Yeah. Look, Brian's he's a phenomenal player. Like he kind of came on in his first year, and like I would have seen these players kind of come up at a minor in 21, and like look, and me as at the time was at 24, 25. Like, yeah, you clock everyone that comes up. You're like, shit, I need to keep an eye on this fella now. And he's like, I need to keep an eye on this fella now. I'm gonna fucking his first training session now. I'm gonna put a fucking hit on him now. So he knows where his bread's buttered. Like, so. But I actually, like, I never caught Brian. Like, Brian came into Brian just kind of like nearly whimpered onto the scene, like, and I was like, whatever. He's like, here comes another one, like, and then he just, the strides that man made in a short period of time was phenomenal. He just turned into a different animal, and he just, look, it's his athleticism. Like, he just, I was speaking with Ballybowden midfielder recently, like, about how you mark players, and sometimes you might in midfield you might mark players from the outside, and I was explaining to him, was like, well, look. If they have the likes of Brian Fenton, you actually can't do that, because he's so good that he can flick inside, left and right, and really make a fool of you. If you think you're just taking the left side, the likes of Brian Fenton will make a show of you. So, look, it's where the game's at. Like, Kieran Whelan did what he did. Kieran was catching 12 balls a game, like, which doesn't happen anymore, and that's what was needed for the game. But Brian Fenton's what's needed for the current game is someone with the athleticism and the mobility and left foot, right foot. It's hard to fault that man's game. He's good at what he does. Yeah.
No.
No.
No, Boy said it there. All Ireland's the best players even raise their game. Like, generally speaking, the best players are the best players in the All Ireland final, and they are best by an even greater amount because they can handle the occasion, the pressure, all the stresses that go with the whole build up to it, and then put on a performance. So I just think that, you know, it's a day for Clifford, it's a day for James McCarthy and Brian Fenton, those sort of fellas, Conor Callaghan, maybe Kilkenny.